No head?
Assassins that also...
Yeah, but give me one of those. I've committed a heresy and need to be assassinated. Face to face. The bug keeps telling me to short the Bible, but I don't fucking know what either of those things mean. Man, I love this still of Bricky. The two Brickies. Here we go. Every single Warhammer 40k faction re-explained in part 2. At least in this video, where I think we're away from the humans now, or are there going to be more humans? Humans are boring. But now, I know my boys. The best faction. The Orks are going to be in this one. Or they should be. If they're not, I will be very upset, Bricky. I think they will be. Like, I mean, you can't do a faction explained video without the orcs, so they're gonna be here. Enough yap. Let's dive in.
This video is part 2 in a 2-part series on every faction re-explained. If you've not seen part 1, you were either snatched by the YouTube algorithm, or you don't let anything, not even common sense, hold you back. And for that, well, I wish I could be that strong. The quest to find the...
No, I can never do a part 2 before a part 1. Never.
Primarchs was expansive and treacherous, to the point where they really should write a book about it. Despite never seeing the Emperor before in their lives, the Primarchs all instinctively knew who the Emperor was.
Who their daddy was. Yep.
Whether it's his psychic connection to him or just plain old intuition, the giant golden god is a bit of a giveaway. The Primarchs all lived their own lives, and some lived substantially better lives than others. Rabute Gilliman of the Ultramarines rose through the ranks of his worlds and ended up turning an entire sector into a high-functioning society, where others, like Mortarion, lived on the poisonous hellscape of Barbarous under the boot heel of his own adopted father. When the Emperor arrived, some wanted to play a little bit of catch with their dad at first, and some didn't trust the baseball bat he was carrying, and some didn't want to play at all. Eventually, one by one, the Emperor returned his sons to his side to bring them back together as one happy family. A family who needed a good cleaning. Are you tired of boring old soap? Is your son the foulest being ever? Do your eyes sting when he comes near? Well, clean that man right back up with the power of Cheeky. That's right, the brand new moisturizing bar soap brought to you by you'll eat. We all touch soap in these videos.
What is this intro? What is happening?
Oh, yeah, so half his sons turned on him. After the Emperor was able to bring all of his sons back.
Damn, this photo go hard.
Back into the fold again.
Damn.
He sent them on their way with his end goal in mind, reclaiming the lost worlds of humanity. Each of his Primarchs fanned out across the galaxy to accomplish this goal, but the one they were expected to report to was his favored son, and the first one found, allegedly, which was Horus. Horus was granted the title of War Master, and he certainly lived up to Big E's expectations, which were very specific and set by Big E himself to all of his sons. However, either intentionally or not, the Emperor did not mention to his sons some of the more chaotic aspects of the galaxy. Horus himself, while in the process of reclaiming a more advanced human world, was informed of the existence of chaos gods, a factoid that Horus initially did not believe. To him, it was a bit unfathomable to think that his father would admit such significant information on the inner workings of the galaxy. However, he soon realized this was the truth, and this betrayal was unacceptable. With the astronomical weight put on his shoulders and his father immediately leaving it all in his hands, combined with the slow corruption of his mind by those closest to him, he began to change his tune. Horus began amassing a following behind his father's back with several other Primarchs and began to formulate plans to usurp him from his throne on Terra. While this was occurring, Magnus the Red tried to FaceTime his dad back on Terra, and that resulted in the shattering of a protective barrier between Terra and the demons of the warp. Due to this damage, the Emperor was forced to sit on the Golden Throne to assure that it would continue to function. Ultimately, half of the Primarchs would fall to chaos, and the remaining half would fight back viciously against their brothers. Horus eventually gained the upper hand and arrived in orbit above Terra itself, and after antagonizing his father...
This is the briefest explanation of the Horus Heresy I think any video has ever done.
Enough, the Emperor temporarily removed himself from the throne, strategically putting his old friend there as a seat warmer, and went to confront Horus himself on the Vengeful Spirit, his flagship. The Emperor faced down his son, and after a heated battle and 64 novels, the Emperor managed to obliterate...
Way too fucking many, dude. Way too fucking many, I'm sorry.
Horus on a subatomic level, but not before his favorite son was able to mortally wound the Emperor. As the dust settled and the traitors fled from Terra, the Emperor's body was dragged back onto the Golden Throne, where it sits permanently to assure that it continues to function. A corpse forced to constantly hold back the horrors of the warp and guide humanity with his pale light. And that light is flickering. From there, the remaining members of the traitors to the Emperor fled to their respective safe havens. These are the veterans of the Long War, the spiteful, and to them, the wronged. Those who would let the galaxy burn if it means the Imperium gets caught in the flames. These are the...
Loud.
And what are the achievements of your fragile Imperium? It is a corpse rotting slowly from within while maggots writhe in its belly. It was built with the toil of heroes and giants, and now it is inhabited by frightened weaklings to whom the glories of those times are half-forgotten legends. I have forgotten nothing, and my wisdom has expanded far beyond mere mortal frailties. The Horus Heresy saw the collapse of the Imperium as we knew it at the time, and half of the Space Marine legions fell to the ruinous powers. Though the favored son, War Master Horus, was killed and the rebellion ended, the heretical forces retreated to the warp and remain a constant threat to this day. The twisted reminder of what the temptations of the warp may bring, the Chaos Space Marines act as a mirror to the loyal legions, and as time progresses, their warp taint further changes them to suit the needs of their patron deity. Though marred and absolutely mangled by the ruinous powers, they are still unmistakably Space Marines in stature and shape, and according to them, they have never been more free. After the heresy, the loyal legions of Space Marines became very strict in their organization, and their separation into separate chapters with capped numbers and other formalities was done to prevent any form of heresy from happening again. The Chaos Space Marines are a bit different. Ultimately, these Marines are subject to the primary legions that fell to Chaos in the first place. The majority of these legions, the Black Legion, the Word Bearers, Iron Warriors, Alpha Legion, and the Night Lords, are supporters of Chaos undivided, either enjoying the powers of all Chaos gods or sometimes shunning them altogether. But a few of them follow a very specific Chaos god. Thousand Sons are followers of Tzeentch, the Death Guard follows Nurgle, Slaanesh has their claws in the Emperor's Children, and the World Eaters are avid followers of Khorne. From there, the legions themselves are separated into roaming war bands that may go under their own unique names or may stake a claim to one of the primary legions. Most of the gear and armor of a Chaos Space Marine remains the same, but stylistically it changes quite a bit to reflect the intention of the legion or their patron god. The Death Guard's armor has become rotted and full of gaping mouths and plague-filled boils. The World Eater's sharp and violent armor reflects their bloodthirst, and the chaotic noise of the Emperor's Children armor, nipple rings included.
What does this do? Why is this there?
Pleases Slaanesh greatly. Due to the taint of Chaos, the armor itself becomes less about plating and more about a new skin for any given Chaos Space Marine. Though the Chaos Space Marines have no true fear of death or numbers diminishing, there are still major recruitment efforts for their legions. However, the conscription of these recruits is a lot more chaos-fueled and is more of a forced assimilation and in some instances, breeding. The organ implementations and other modifications are the same, and the necessity of a gene seed remains the same, but the result is a hell of a lot different. Understanding Chaos Space Marines is a difficult exercise. If we took my original video 5 years back and looked at the Imperial Knights section, it mainly focuses on big stompy robots. Now that I understand more, I can discuss the Code Chivalric, the Throne Mechanicum, Squires, and Monarchs, and bring some more context to it all. To assume Chaos Space Marines are simply the opposite side of Space Marines would be foolish, for once you understand the plight of their Primarchs, it can provide a context always needed. Horus himself turned through an overwhelming weight on his shoulders and lies told by his father. But what of Angron? Angron lived as a slave gladiator for his planet's masters, who took Dark Age technology and shoved it into his brain, so experiencing any emotion other than rage was agony for him. He finally leads a revolt for his fellow gladiators and frees himself from the confines of servitude. The Emperor finds him and says he will take him home, but Angron refuses. He will fight with his friends against the tyranny of his slave owners to the last. At the final last stand with him and his closest friends, slave gladiators, all of them outnumbered and on the verge of death, the Emperor forcefully teleports Angron to his flagship and none of his compatriots, leaving—
Dude, what the fuck? You know what? That would piss me off too. Angron? Justified.
Angron to live and watch all of his friends die. You kept that mule core Pharaon.
Again, I've said it before. The Emperor did it to himself. He's stupid. He doesn't have big brain. Tiny brain, really.
Russ kept his kin friends. The Lion kept Luther. Humans, brothers, and foster fathers. Saved and raised into Legion ranks. But not me. Not Angron, no. Did the Emperor teleport his gold-wrapped custodians down to help me in my army? No. Did he free the Warhounds and order them to battle, fight alongside me? No. Did he save my brothers and sisters the way he spared and honored the Lion's kin, the way he honored Cor Pharaon? No, no, and no. No mercy for Angron, Angron the Oathbreaker, Angron the Betrayer.
Angron justified.
Conrad Curze lived as a lonely boy, scrounging the dregs of a hive city plagued by constant visions of an assassin sent to murder him by his own father. Lorgar was born on a world of chaos worshippers with abusive parents, and the Emperor decided the best way to reprimand him was destroy his holy city. The Emperor robbed Mortarion of vengeance and suppressed Magnus at every turn. The question isn't why the Primarchs rebelled. The question is, why didn't they sooner? To them, they are not the betrayers. They are the betrayed. They were under the boot of a golden tyrant, and they finally could be free from his heel. Of course, things have changed a lot since the heresy, and
the nipple horns are a bit excessive. These guys, I don't think I'm on the side of.
Primarchs of the Chaos Space Marines.
But Angron, you know what? My opinion of Angron, I think, has changed. I think I used to be an Angron hater. I don't really remember.
Survive the Fall are a twisted variant of what they used to be. They have all, for the most part, ascended to the position of Demon Prince and act as a direct connection between their god and their legion. However, due to the nature of the transformation and dedication to a particular chaos god, their actions tend to be separate from their legion's actions. Fulgrim, for example, is so infatuated with being a Demon Prince of Slaanesh that he is at times far too focused on his own personal perfection as opposed to conquest and sitting around like Frankfurter on his throne. Meanwhile, Lorgar is being stalked by a bird, so he's always on edge.
What?
The most adamant against the temptations of the Chaos Gods, Perturabo, was even made a Demon Prince as a reward for being the one who did the most work on the group project. Chaos Space Marines are a fascinating faction because there is a great deal of cognitive dissonance that is represented in them. Depending on which faction you follow, your devotion to chaos is a sliding scale, and the representation in the universe is so varied. Some are there to reap a high tally of kills for their patron deity, while others Others are there purely to destroy the Imperium who wronged them. Some are there to torture and maim, and some are there to conquest and conquer. There is no unifying glue. They fight each other as much as they fight everyone else, and their machinations are entirely up to their warband. You have all walked different paths, but together, we have come to the same destination. The Emperor has failed us. The Imperium has failed us all. It has failed us by the laxity of its laws, the decadence of its culture, and in the injustices heaped upon those of us who serve the most loyally. It has failed us by never recognizing our virtues, never rewarding us for the blood we shed and bringing about its ascendancy, and never providing unity when we needed it most. It has failed us by being flawed to its core, imperfect in its pursuit of a perfect culture, and in its weakness against the encroachment of Xenos breeds that seek to twist humanity to alien ends. And it has failed us, most of all, by being founded upon lies. The Imperium is forged by a dangerous deceit and erodes us all by demanding we sacrifice truth on the altar of necessity. This is an empire propagated by sin that deserves to die. And here on Istvan V, we begin the purge. From these ashes shall rise the new kingdom of mankind, an Imperium of justice, faith, and enlightenment.
Let's
an
not go too
Imperium
far there.
heralded, commanded, and protected by the avatars of the gods themselves. An empire strong enough to stand through a future of blood and fire. Naturally, however, as I have said before, Space Marines do not make up the bulk of the fighting force in the Imperium, so it would be ludicrous for me to not mention their dark cousins. The Code Chivalry is the sign of the power of the Imperial Knights. But what about the ruinous powers claimed during the Horus Heresy extended beyond just the Space Marines and the Primarchs. Mars itself was subject to a revolution that saw half of them fall to chaos as well. And some of the once loyal knight houses saw themselves swearing fealty to the dark gods. The falling of these factions allows for the war machine of chaos to continue uninterrupted and to have firepower equal to that of the Imperium itself. The Dark Mechanicum, as the name suggests, is the chaos-affiliated branch of the Mechanicus, and have a lot more free reign, much like the freedoms of the Chaos Space Marines. The seeds of the Dark Mechanicum were planted fairly early due to some of the Mechanicum not really seeing the Emperor as the Omnissiah immediately, and Horus exploited this to allow the schism to happen a bit more naturally. Unlike their Imperial brothers, the Dark Mechanicum have the ability to invent and innovate. What a concept. While also utilizing forbidden technologies such as the Silica Animus or AI. The Dark Mechanicum do have their own desires to find lost technologies and put them to use, but they're more interested in taking ancient and forbidden technology from Imperial worlds and activating them for their own purposes. Because what good is a bunch of knob and tube wiring if you don't overload it with as many extension cords as possible? However, instead of being clear-cut and more generalized creations, the inventions of the Dark Mechanicum are inherently tied with the warp and its demons. Genetic experimentation and modification, the fusion of man and machine are exceptionally common, and no creation is more reflective of this than the demon engines. Instead of regular tanks and vehicles, the demon engines are machines bound with the presence of demons to make them living war machines. Unlike the vehicles of the Imperium, where a Mechanicus priest may be there to aid in its repair, a Warpsmith sorcerer is there to essentially repair and irritate the demon engine so that it can be a more effective killing machine. In certain factions, like the bitter and siege-loving Iron Warriors, they will lure demons with the promise of glory and easy bloodletting, only to then forcibly trap them into these demonic engines to use as weapons of war against the Imperium. Some lesser gods, like Vashtor the Archifane, is also a contract and arms dealer for the demonic stuff that comes out of chaos. Many demons may sign a pact with Vashtor in the soul forges of the warp, and in doing so are given the weapons of war to kill as much as they can. Should they do so, excellent, you may keep it. Should you not, I hope you enjoy your soul working in the forges for all eternity. That's what you signed with blood and oil. In addition,
right here on page 22, line 47, right there. That's your signature. Send it. Right there. See, sorry, it's out of my hands now.
Like their ties in the Loyalist realm, the Dark Mechanicum and the Chaos Knight houses are deeply intertwined. There were, of course, many Knight houses that swore fealty and bent the knee to War Master Horus during the Heresy, but a good portion of them had no choice, as they were absorbed by warp storms and corrupted into compliance. Many of these Chaos Knights reflect the very early Dark Age technology Knights with more corrupted weapons. The Throne Mechanicum, which once had a noble sitting and taking control of generations of previous drivers and taming a beast, is now a saddle to a monstrosity of wrath and hatred. The nobles of the Chaos Knights fight to aggravate and bring the machine to their will while combating the corrupted minds of their fallen ancestors. Some of these nobles may do such a good job that they themselves fuse into the throne itself and become one with the knight. If a noble dies, no worries at all. Unlike the Imperial ones that require a pilot, a demon can hop into the cockpit and control it instead. The Night Worlds also see full corruption as well. Where there were once peasants, there are now cultists, and the goal of the Chaos Knights are just as chaotic as the gods they follow. Some are sent to war by the ruinous powers, others may protect Dark Mechanicum Forge worlds, and others still may be so hyped up on the ruinous powers that they are just aimless and reckless, hoping to unravel the fabric of the universe itself. Though the aspect of nobility is still there with the Chaos Knight, but it's hardly the same as it is on the Imperial side, as opposed to a beautiful knightly stallion.
Okay, for those that are questioning what those beeps are, because I just realized my webcam is covering it. Apparently, when Ricky recorded this, he did not turn off his Discord notifications. So those beeps you're hearing are not from your Discord, nor are they from mine. They are from Ricky, and the editor is making jokes out of it that you guys cannot see. Sorry.
The knights here are horrifying and unpredictable monstrosities, fueled in part by the agony of the memories of the ancestors trapped within. An invasion by a house of chaos.
Ooh, I like this style for Warhammer. This is neat.
Knights is a horrifying thing. One might ask, how do knights enter the battlefield? Normally they can be deployed via dropships the standard way, but Imperial Knights can be deployed with a drop keep. A gigantic knight keep with like towers and stuff will hurtle towards the surface like a drop pod and be slammed into the ground with an excessively thunderous crash. Then massive
so fucking dramatic.
Drawbridges slam down, banners unfurl, and huge horns play the song of their people as these lumbering robots
oh, overly excessive.
Charge out of their, again, drop keep to fight for the Imperium. So imagine what a warp-fueled version of this could look like.
If you get the opportunity, you should kill yourself.
Chaos Knights have such a presence, the warp fluctuates in their tread. They bring doom, dread, and despair across the battlefield. Warp storms occur overhead, and psychic phenomenon cling to them. A Chaos Knight will arrive either in some warp-debased platform, or perhaps a portal itself, or climb out of a pool of blood. As the air gets heavy, the enemy feels a crippling sense of paranoia, and the sky begins to rain blood, acid, and God knows what else. The horrors of the warp have resulted in a dramatic change in technology in the favor of their forces. Though in practice, it is a horror beyond comprehension, their baseline desires don't seem that radical on paper. They are creative builders, working to innovate and improve technology while utilizing anything they can to accomplish their STEM goals. Looking at the dark forces of chaos and the Emperor now on his golden throne, humanity is fractured. The Emperor himself is the guiding light for warp travel for humanity, and in being that exists as a beacon for the entire species. Without him, things would get somehow worse. Therefore, he needs his protectors. Where a Thunder Warrior wasn't enough for his armies, and half of his Space Marines turned traitor, the Emperor's personal bodyguards are something else entirely. They are not the fallible Astartes, nor are they a nightmarish concoction of organs and indoctrination. They are built and gene-crafted, with science bordering on magic. They number 10,000 strong, and each of them is a hero. They are the Rare is the battle where an Emperor's custodians outnumber our foes. We are ever beset, surrounded upon all sides by heresy and foulness, just as is Terra itself. Yet, like the throne world, we stand resolute, indefatigable, indomitable. Let the enemy come. Let them darken the horizon with their numbers. Still, we will prevail. Though the Emperor sits rotting on the golden throne, his talons remain sharp. The Talons of the Emperor was the name given to the most elite forces at his disposal. The left hand of his talons comes in the form of the Sisters of Silence.
You already know what I'm about to say. I need to even say the words. Or, well, word. A smash.
Psychic blanks that scoured the galaxy to claim souls to fuel the Astronomicon in the form of the Great Tide. 1,000 psychers sacrificed daily to keep the Emperor of Mankind alive, dragged into the black ships of the Silent Sisterhood. The right hand of the Emperor's protectorate, his golden bodyguards that serve him and only him. These are the Custodians. While the members of the Space Marines went out to take
like janitors?
Back the galaxy, the Legio Custodes stood back and kept a close watch over the Emperor himself. The Custodes are, in a sense, similar to Space Marines in that they are genetically modified super soldiers clad in power armor, but that is where the similarities stop. Their genetic makeup seems to be made from the Emperor himself, or at least something quite close. And the precision of their creation predates the development of the Space Marines and even the Primarchs. Unlike Space Marine recruitment, where there's a process undertaken when a subject is at least somewhat grown, a Custodian's process begins at infancy. The methods in which they are made are a secret, but what is known is that at the very beginning, each Custodian was made by the Emperor himself. Regardless of the bioalchemical process, the process is exceptionally long and grueling, and only a handful of selected aspirants make it to the end. Those that do are clad in the most regal and effective armor in the Imperium. Commonly, a Custodian is seen carrying a Guardian Spear, an utterly yoked up version of the staves the Praetorian Guards of the Emperor in Star Wars had. They are also clad with specific shields and blades, but the most interesting thing with all of their gear is that due to the meticulous and dedicated maintenance and preservation of their armor and gear, these items are the same ones they used 10,000 years ago. The Custodians do not age biologically, so some of the veterans in the Guard may be several thousand years old. And unlike the Space Marines, they fight entirely as a solo force. When a line of Custodians is holding back waves of enemies, they operate independently. There are no battle formations, there are no squad tactics. Each Custodian is the main character, trailed by serfs and servitors, tasked entirely to reload their weapons. They fight with a singular purpose, if not action. Groups of Custodians will dispatch enemy after enemy, their spears coming within inches of each other, but never close enough for a killing blow. Their strikes are intentionally defensive, allowing their opponents to attack 1 to 2 times before parrying and ending their lives. Each strike deflected is an opportunity to know their enemy more and learn from their patterns. They are truly the Emperor's bodyguards, masters of close combat, enemy knowledge, and reactions measured in milliseconds. Though the Custodians are a part of the Adeptus Terra, the members of the Guard only answer to their own leadership and the Emperor himself. The leader of the Custodes is known as the Captain General, and individual squads of Custodians are overseen by a shield captain. As their focus is on the Emperor, their command center is located within the Imperial Palace. The Tower of Hegemon serves as their primary base of operations, but there is a dedicated elite guard of Custodians known as the Companions that stands 300 strong by the Emperor's side. In total, the Custodes are 10,000 strong, and when a member retires, their name is added to the Hall of Name and vanish across the galaxy in a cloaked disguise to serve as eyes and ears for the Imperium. Despite their numbers and their strength, the members of the Custodes do not consider themselves to be soldiers or warriors in any way. They see themselves strictly as the guardians of the Emperor in all facets of his presence. This extends beyond the physical Custodians believe they represent the guarding of the Emperor's ideals and philosophies too. Their gains are both physical and literary. They are the protectorates of everything the Emperor stood for, and in doing so, the Custodians are also artisans and scholars, in addition to being the Golden Guard of the Golden Throne. However, due to this
Golden Guard of the Golden Throne, I do like that. I do like that. I do.
Nature of being protectorates, they have a very strong view when it comes to the Space Marines and the Primarchs. The Emperor himself had insinuated many times that once the galaxy was brought to heel, that there would be no need for the Space Marines anymore, and they were to go the same way that the Thunder Warriors went before them. The Custodes were meant to be the judge, jury, and executioner of this will, and are biologically designed not only to be able to take down Space Marine with ease, but to be able to go toe-to-toe with the Primarch as well. During the Heresy, the Custodians mused on how suspiciously easy it was to kill Chaos Space Marines, as if they were trained and made for that explicit purpose. Constantine Valdor, one of the closest advisors of the Emperor, was asked if he ever disagreed with Big E on something, and he said once, with the formation of the Primarchs.
I feel I do my best, but they don't.
Let me ask you a very fair question. What do you do successfully? Quickly.
I hate that every time we're in Untucked, the conversations are about me.
And besides the trained distrust for Space Marines, the Custodians also have evidence for their distrust. The Horus Heresy saw half of the chapters fall to chaos and turn traitor against the Emperor. In the mind of a Custodian, the fact that half of the Space Marines fell before means that the other half can fall with ease. They are fully capable of wiping out literally any force.
Damn, they don't even trust the Chad that is Gilliman? Or my man, Vulcan? Those are like the only two I trust.
Put against.
Didn't actually know anything like about, I guess.
And in a sense are the final representation of the golden age of terror. However, they are forced to stand in silent and blind service to the Emperor and to the ill of the Imperium. And they, for 10,000 years, have stood vigil over the Imperium and have watched its rise and fall with the inability to do anything about it. While they do go out and fight some battles here and there, at the end of the day, the vastness of the Imperium means that the closest advisors to the Emperor himself are powerless to make any change. But goddamn, can they kill a Space Marine? For 100 years, I stood my watch amidst the somber shadows of the Sanctum Imperialis. I was still as a statue, but always ready, always attuned to dangers unseen. Days, months, years passed by in a frenzied blur beyond those walls, yet within, little moved and nothing changed. For 100 years, I did not but wait, yet had any threat appeared, I would have struck it down in a heartbeat. For 100 years, I stood my watch, and as it ends, I can tell you this: patience is a weapon. Of course, a threat directly to Terra itself would appear to be something foolish. It's in the deepest parts of Imperial space and is one of the most defended bastions in the galaxy. You'd truly have to be foolhardy or insane to think that you can take on Terra itself. However, one faction certainly got close. In the dark ages of the stars and in a river of misery, there is one faction having a crackin' old time. The galaxy sees them as savages, yet they have already figured out the questions of the universe. Their numbers are uncountable, their technology incomprehensible, and yet their violence is so very green. I am, of course, talking about the The Orks are the pinnacle of creation. Yes. For them, the great struggle is won. They have evolved a society which knows no stress or angst. Who are we to judge them? We Eldar who have failed, or the humans on the road to ruin in their turn? And why? because we saw answers to questions that an orc wouldn't even bother to ask.
Damn
we
right.
see a culture that is strong and despise it as crude. During the war in heaven, the old ones were doing their best to spawn as many combatants to their cause as possible by seeding the galaxy in a specialized sense. The Eldar were made to be a precise and tactical species to fight off the Catan and the Necrons, but another prominent species was made by them as well. The Krork were warriors clad in ornate armor with more dangerous weaponry. However, things changed, and these warriors changed, and the Krork are no more. They are now known as the boys, the lads, the mates, the orcs. An orc in 40k looks like an orc in most other fantasy media. Hulking, warlike monstrosities with big teeth and worse attitudes. However, unlike the more Tolkien-esque forms of these creatures, the devastating nature of the orcs is in their biology. Unlike most species in the galaxy, the orcs are actually a type of fungus. This fungus itself comes in various forms. The small goblin-like Gretchen and Snotlings are a part of this fungal ecosystem as well, and also the squigs, which can be used for basically anything. But regardless of what is a part of the fungal system, all of them are born from spores that land on the ground and grow. As they travel around the galaxy, they drop spores literally everywhere, and then an orc dies, and they drop tons of fungal spores that allows for their numbers to be replenished over a period of time. Because of this, orcs are not only extremely prominent across the galaxy, but they are exceptionally resilient due to their growing cycle. Even if one orc lands on a planet, it will be nearly impossible to get rid of all of the orc presence unless the planet itself is completely destroyed. And even then, they might find a way to survive. Due to their
That's why they're the
nature,
best.
orcs don't really stop growing. And the more long-lived an orc is, the bigger they get. And the more an orc fights, the bigger they get. Of course, since they're constantly getting into scraps, an orc's lifespan isn't necessarily that long, so the bigger orcs are harder to find. Though alongside this, however, they are a tribe-based species that is comprised of war bands, and the biggest and the strongest orc leads the war band,
as it should be in all society,
known as the War Boss. At the bottom end of the orc tribal system are the Gretchens and the Snotlings. These members act as the servants and slaves of the orcs, and sometimes their actual ammunition, despite being a bit smarter and more cunning than their bigger brethren. Because in orc culture, the biggest is the boss. The smallest gets picked on and thrown around. Beyond the war bands and the tribes, orcs also belong to a specific clan. Tribes constantly shatter and rebuild, but the clans do not. They are, in a sense, a psychological state of being for any given orc, and gives an orc their specific character and traits. And to make things easier, these clans are also color-coded. So that's very easy to tell what orc does what. Though there are many clans out there, 6 of them are the most prominent and well-known. The Bad Moons are essentially the merchants and have a lot of money because their currency is teeth, and they grow teeth faster than any others. The Blood Axes are the stealth units, and by stealth, it means like slightly more quiet than the others, and they have a love for LARPing as humies. Death Skulls are the scavengers, and the Goths are the close combat specialists. And on the 2 ends of the spectrum, we also have the tech-savvy Evil Sons, and the more traditionalist and tribal Snakebites. Another major facet of orcs is their religious beliefs. They believe in 2 gods, Gork and Mork. Gork is cunningly brutal, and Mork is brutally cunning. The difference between them, according to orcs, is that Mork hits you when you aren't looking, and Gork hits you when you are. There's a lot of confusion as to which one is which, and this results in a lot of infighting. In other species, this would be considered a sort of religious conflict, but for the orcs, it's just another excuse to fight. I have a quote here, but I don't really do a good orc voice. So I'm going to get my co-host of That's Ridiculous to read this one, and I'll try to lip sync it.
Oh, he's more cunning than a grot, and more killy than a dread. The boys that follow me can't be beat.
Damn, I was gonna try and do an orc voice, but I'm not trying to follow that up. Fuck that.
On Pisana, we jumped the Marine boys, and our boss pose was cut.
This dude is good at it.
Other than the helmets we took from the dead ends. We burned their port and killed their bosses and left nothing but ruins behind. I'm Warlord Gezgul Mac Ork Waaagh, and I speak with the word of the gods. We's gonna stomp the universe flat and kill anything what fights back. We's gonna do this 'cause we're orcs, and we was made to fight and win.
Wow. Sounds terrible. Fighting is the biggest aspect of orc culture, and it's essentially their life's purpose. They are genetically hardwired to get into battles and scraps with enemies that can feel pain. The more they fight, the bigger they get. This, combined with them getting bigger over time, means that some of the biggest and baddest orcs of all time have been notably gigantic. The Beast, as he was known, was about the size of an Imperial knight. If an orc runs out of other enemies to fight, they will immediately start infighting to scratch the battle itch. For example, in The Warp, a planet exists where a band of orcs are in a constant state of war and battle, and have been for an improbably long amount of time, strictly because how much Khorne enjoys himself watching it. For some, being trapped in a perpetual war planet for all eternity would be a fate worse than death, but to the boys, this is heaven. In the event of a particularly big battle, a massive amount of tribes and warbands will unite under what is known as the Waaagh. The concept of a Waaagh covers a few bases. The first is the group aspect of the massive green tidal wave of orcs fighting for the same cause, the cause being the second base. But the most prominent aspect of the Waaagh is the psychic aspect of it. Remember how the old ones made the Eldar and all the Eldar are psychic? Well, the orcs are too, kinda, but just not as much. Only a little bit of it. And they often don't know how to use it and frankly don't care. But a huge gathering of orcs generates a psychic field that allows orcs to be more organized, dangerous, and dedicated to the war-based cause. However, the true extent of the psychic energy and its usage is relatively unknown, but that doesn't matter considering the outcome 90% of the time. In a similar sense, their ragtag technology and weaponry is also a mystery to most who encounter it purely because of that Waaagh energy. The technology the orcs use seem to be held together with duct tape and plastic glue, and crude doesn't even begin to describe it. Their guns seem to have an inordinate amount of ammunition and firepower, and they are seemingly able to put things together on the fly in the middle of combat. The Imperium is of the mind that the orcs' weapons and machinery only work due to their innate psychic ability, but realistically, orc gear hardly works in the first place. Weapons blow up in a Bugs Bunny-esque manner all the time, and their war buggies can collapse in the middle of battle. Just because it works a handful of times does not mean it's an effective weapon, but this
it's good enough for the boys.
Doesn't stop the orcs and their green tide. To really understand the power of the Waaagh energy, orcs can operate purely off of belief. Now, a misconception is that orcs believe something is real and it happens. But that isn't true, because that's just one orc. However, there's never one orc. There's normally a few billion orcs together, and if they all believe something is true, the warp will tend to respond with a positive green light. Sometimes. Do the red ones go faster? Well, with enough orcs, yeah. How does an orc buggy with an engine block that's just a boulder with vroom vroom written in chalk work? Who cares? Orcs breathing on a ship with a hull breach? Go ahead. An orc went back in time to kill a version of himself so he could have two of his favorite weapons. It is shenanigans. Because
I fucking love the orcs, man.
Because of their actions and aesthetic, the orcs tend to be presented in a comic relief sense in a lot of media, particularly the media from their perspective. They are bumbling and loud and goofy British football hooligans, and they say silly things and act in silly ways. But to the citizens of the Imperium, the orcs are far from funny. They are violent and irrational creatures that take humans for punching bags, slaves, or ultimately dinner. They have no moral compass and are violent and brutal killers that know nothing else. They are genetically designed to be a violent species that was capable of beating back the Necrons and the Catan. And if the orcs were ever able to unify under one banner, they would be utterly unstoppable. However, due to their aggressive nature, their organizational skills are non-existent, and they tend to just beat each other up for the fun of it. All that exists in the mind of an orc is fighting, and nothing else. If they wipe out their enemies, they will inevitably wipe themselves out as well. They are a brutal Ouroboros doomed to an endless war cycle, but to an orc, why does it matter?
It doesn't.
If they fight and they win, they win. If they fight and they die, it was a good fight.
Damn
now
right.
that the Xenos armies are growing in strength and more are threatening the safety of the Imperium, they need to bring new methods in order to handle what they are currently facing. The Emperor is on the Golden Throne. Half the Space Marines are traitor and they are beset from enemies within and without. So now the Lords on Terra must prepare for anything possible and sometimes the impossible. For that, they take to the stars to explore and expand. They recruit assassins for priority eliminations. They train a galactic police force and a secret police to root out any and all heresy. The lesser known yet most feared, I carry with me an inquisitorial seal. It is a small, unassuming object contained in a neat box of Pluvian obsidian. It is a modest thing, relatively plain, adorned with a single motif and a simple motto. Yet with this little object, I can sign the death warrant of an entire world and consign 1 billion souls to oblivion. Where the Imperium may see its justice dealt out by the hands of its armies and the gauntlets of its Astartes, when one needs eyes, ears, or both cut out, it looks to the agents of the Imperium. In a meta sense, these agents are a homogenized version of multiple factions from the original video 5 years ago. They comprise multiple aspects of the wide and all-encompassing armies of humanity and serve different roles. Whether it be the law enforcers of the Adeptus Sororitas, the void-faring explorers of rogue traders, the invisible hand of the Assassinorum,
Smash.
or the hospitality of the Emperor's Inquisition, each
Lord have mercy.
has a part to play in the God Emperor's domain. Rogue traders are a great example of a somewhat undiscussed part of the Imperium, its nobility. While you may see the General Imperium as a totalitarian hellscape, because it is, this is to those under the boot of the nobles that run it. Rogue traders are a special kind of explorer, and their existence is extremely important to the function of the Imperium. A rogue trader is often an
Yeah.
extremely special individual and is given the monumentally sized warrant of trade, allowing them to be given almost complete and utter freedom. Their task is simple: to chart the uncharted, learn the unlearned, and do whatever they can as an explorer and conquistador for those back on Terra. This information is, strictly speaking, invaluable. Whether a sector can be settled and colonies built, or precious rare resources exist on a floating asteroid can be mined, or a long-lost Imperial world from the Age of Strife is recovered, it's all absolutely imperative. These rogue traders are faster than any other kind of Imperial armada, and therefore chart the direction of the entire society. Because of this, rogue traders are given a substantial amount of freedom. They have a ship and a crew of specialists, and can do things that would see any normal person shot. They can barter deals and even recruit.
I mean, do I need to say it? Like, been over this. Smash.
Recruit Xenos races. They can explore areas strictly prohibited, and they can earn a vast amount of wealth and riches in doing so. This tends to make rogue traders a very long lineage, and their heirs take up the mantle of their house. By being explorers, they become fabulously wealthy, and some can become quite the assholes while doing so. But truly, much like a
No way, people that pursue wealth are assholes? Wouldn't have guessed.
night pilot, a rogue trader is an exceptionally rich individual who can back it up. They are master swordsmen, explorers, merchants, settlers, diplomats, and everything in between. They chart a course and they set the grounds, which means they will need someone to defend them, and the prime choice for that can be the Adeptus Sororitas. Now, the Sororitas are cops. Judge Dredd's
They look pretty cool, though. Their armor looks pretty sick.
style cops, as their inspiration clearly shows. Each planet will have their own members of local law enforcement, and most of them will settle many of the issues there and then. But when something requires a far more in-depth peacekeeping force, the Adeptus Sororitas are brought in. Think local police versus the FBI. Arbitrators in the Arbites
Yes.
tend to focus heavily on stopping crime before it can become too much of a threat. A criminal gang or heretical uprising can be subdued quickly and efficiently by utilizing them and dealing with soon-to-be criminals, as they put it. They will tap into communications, create spy networks, do interrogations and sabotage.
So, no. Hold up. Hold up. Hold up. Taking a while to... Okay. Hold up. Hold up. Hold up. We're almost there. So, no head.
Spy networks, do interrogations and sabotage, anything that helps the good of the Imperium and the law they seek to preserve. The code
Fucking looks inspired by... That looked really inspired by RoboCop. Really just the helmet.
The Code of the Arbites is laid out entirely via the Book of Judgment, a gigantic library of pages showing every single law from every single High Lord of Terra in the history of the Imperium.
What?
Because the Imperium is so vast, hundreds of laws are added every single day, and the library continues to grow with more and more laws and judgments. While Arbites themselves carry a small version called the Book of Law on their person, this does end up creating a system where the unjustly prosecuted will never escape their prisons. If an innocent is wrongly convicted,
Wow, sounds like America.
any form of legal counsel will need to go through the Book of Judgment to help get you out. Often these prisoners require hundreds of years of litigation in which they will eventually expire before they can be deemed wrongly convicted. Innocence is irrelevant. You have been judged guilty of transgressing the Lex Imperialis. Do not compound your guilt by evading punishment, as there are greater crimes, so are there greater sentences. Of course, should something go out of the hands of the Adeptus Arbites, there is always the silent hand of the Officio Assassinorum to take their place. Naturally, the Imperium has a
Yeah, baby. Send one of those after me. I don't care if I die.
assassins, and these assassins are sent to dispatch important figures that would not normally be handled by simply sending waves and waves of guardsmen at it. The Assassinorum is headed by the Grand Master of the Assassinorum, who is a High Lord of Terra and perhaps the shadiest individual in the entire galaxy. At his disposal are multiple types of assassins that all
Yeah, but give me one of those. I've committed a heresy and need to be assassinated. Face to face.
specialize in various things. Their training is extreme and absurd. Aspirant children are often subjected to Hunger Games style combat with each other on the ride over to the temple. Then you get low gravity, high pressure, traps, horrendous physical and mental strain, and everything in between. Then their minds are wiped completely and the real fun begins. An Imperial Assassin is nothing to mess around with. They are some of the fastest moving and hardest hitting things the Imperium has at hand and can go toe to toe with Space Marines depending on which temple they are from. Some, like the Vindicares, are master snipers who lie in wait for weeks, days, or even months just to get the perfect headshot from 5 kilometers away and disappear. The Calidus Temple are masters
Done one of those.
of shape-shifting and take a drug that allows them to transmute their body into whatever they see fit.
That.
A confidant of a target may be killed and they will take their place before killing their target outright. Or they could shift into a member of a Chaos Warband with symbols and flesh and all that to earn the trust of a cult leader before slitting their throat. The Caluxus Assassin is a psychic blank, a soulless mutation, making them appear as uneasy to normal humans and downright disgusting to psychers. When a powerful psyker is causing issues, this is who you send. Their specialized helmet enhances their already latent powers and will allow them to all but drain the souls from those they touch and their very body. It is an extreme weapon used when a direct form of pressure must be applied to an otherwise untouchable psyker. Now, if you need a direct pressure in a more literal way, the Eversor is for you. A drugged up comatose psychopath that is directly dropped on enemy lines and allowed to wreak havoc, killing anything and everything it sees in a blaze of movement and blood before it inevitably dies and causes a plasma explosion on its demise. There are other temples as well. The
Yes. Again.
Vanis Temple, acting as sort of like a cyber hacker. The Venom temple specializing in poisons, but all in all, assassins move with their skin-tight body gloves with a speed unmatched and force unexpected.
Yeah, they do.
One of the best assassin novels puts a Vindicator Calidus and Vanus to infiltrate a night world, kill the High Monarch of the Night, who is permanently stuck in his giant robot knight, install a new ruler in his stead, and make sure nobody knows the Imperium did it. Their missions are insanity, and their tasks impossible, and they do it anyway. Thus is the power the Assassinorum wields. We do not determine the guilty, we do not decide the punishment. We are merely the cold instrument of the Emperor's vengeance. There is no form of death unknown to us. There is no form of terror beyond our means. There is no enemy outside our reach. We are the blade that hovers over the throat of the traitor. We are the bullet that awaits the heretic's skull. We are the poison in the throat of the alien. However, despite the prowess of the traitors, the police, and the assassins, there is one that stands above all. As the Imperium settled into its post-Emperor world, they needed a force to root out corruption wherever it could be found. But they needed specialized individuals who could do so. Men and women who would serve as detective and executioner. This new secret police would have unlimited authority, and they would be known as the Inquisition. Inquisitors of the Inquisition are one of the most feared individuals in all of the galaxy for the common members of humanity. Trained in the most difficult of conditions and mental hardening, they have long closed their minds to the compassions of those they deem guilty. Inquisitors are, for the most part, detectives, but they are detectives whose authority is unmatched and actions justified by the state itself. Similar to the KGB, the Gestapo, the Stasi, the OVRA, but unlike those organizations, the Inquisition has far more authority and is one of the only types of individuals who can commit exterminatus, the term used for the utter and total destruction of a planet that is no longer deemed usable by the Imperium. While it is a very exciting word and a commonly notable thing done in Warhammer, exterminatus is not actually used particularly often. It's a last resort entirely meant to stop the enemy from gaining a major foothold or spread even more corruption. Even with 1 million worlds, the wholesale slaughter of an entire planet is still a massive blow to the Imperium. Inquisitors range quite a bit, not just in how they operate, but also in their personalities. They are often main characters for a
That dude wearing sunglasses?
large amount of books, as detective noir is a great genre, and they can be the most stone-cold killer or a pragmatic and sympathetic individual depending on who they are. Radical inquisitors may utilize methods unlike most of the Imperium, such as alien tech or even demon hosts, where Puritans stick closer to the methods of the religious state and shun any deviations. They also specialize in various aspects, as the Inquisition has orders or ordos, such as Xenos for aliens, Malleus for demons, and Hereticus for, you guessed it. Truly, if you are a normal citizen of the Imperium, a person flashing an inquisitorial rosette in front of you may be one of the most terrifying moments of your entire life. It is the same as an FBI badge or a KGB member, except now you're in Warhammer. So, their authority and tools are infinite. Agents of the Imperium are vast and offer a ton of different concepts to the world of Warhammer, and they continue to expand as the Emperor's descent into the Golden Throne has lasting effects on humanity. As time progressed, a few people seeing the Emperor as a deity made their voices louder, and over a few thousand years, worship of the Emperor was not only considered expected, but state mandated. This church will be known as the Ecclesiarchy, and there were many who would look to the cardinal position and make desperate grabs at their power, leaving horrid effects on the populace. The Age of Apostasy was a time of reformation in the Imperium that saw its eventual change into an overtly religious empire. During this time, an all
Yes, please.
female warrior cult to the Emperor called the Daughters of the Emperor were a bit more isolated from the wider Imperium. However, as the Ecclesiarchy began to take root, one Goj Van Dyer became the High Lord of the Administratum and noticed these warriors and felt they could be useful to him. Goj himself told these warriors that he was the voice of the Emperor himself and demanded they fire upon him to prove it. Having a little hidden force field that this warrior cult had never seen before, the bullet bounced off of him and showing him to be unharmed. Truly, blessed by the Emperor. This cult became known as the Brides of the Emperor and acted as his personal bodyguards and aides. However, Doge Van Dyer was a tyrant, and his horrendous reign spelt ruination for the wider Imperium, which made the Adeptus Custodes take notice. Despite an outright coup and revolt against him, the deadlock was getting steep as the Brides of the Emperor's fierce combat skills kept him safe. One Custodian made contact with the leader of the Brides and brought her into the throne room of the Emperor himself. Nobody knows what transpired in that room, save for Alicia Dominica, the Custodian, and the Emperor himself. However, she left the room with her hair bleached pure white from the interaction, marched her battle brides directly to Van Dyer himself and said, "You have committed the ultimate heresy. Not only have you turned your back on the Emperor and stepped from his light, you have profaned his name and almost destroyed everything he has striven to build. You have perverted and twisted the path he has laid for mankind to tread. As your decrees have stated, there can be no mercy for such a crime, no pity for such a criminal. I renounce your lordship. You walk in the darkness and cannot be allowed to live. Your sentence has been long overdue, and it is now time for you to die." Despite not having any time to die, Doge Van Dyer found some time to do so. With his head lopped clean from his body, the Brides of the Emperor were no more, and the Ecclesiarchy signed a document to stop Van Dyer's reign from happening again. They would no longer be allowed to have men under arms. Men. The Adeptus Sororitas, or commonly known as the Sisters of Battle, the nuns with guns, the fighting force of the church. Despite being the main militant faction, the Sisters of Battle, their organization actually is far more diverse than this and have many more nun-based roles for their members. They are organized by various orders with various specialties in mind, such as the non-militant orders like the Hospitaller, Dialogus, and Familius, including things like helping with surgical equipment and various other medical stuff, Duolingo, and a poli-sci degree. These orders are further separated into smaller orders in an almost Space Marine chapter sense, but tend to have more flexibility due to the nature of their work. And in addition to that, there is flexibility between the orders. It is not uncommon for a member of one of the more battle-hardened orders to switch to a more passive one once they've sustained battlefield injuries or are a bit closer to retirement. As mentioned before, the Sisters of Battle are a part of their own separate organization, Orders Militant, and feature the highest number of any given system. They are the official fighting force of the Ecclesiarchy, and they specialize in wars of faith. Unlike the deployment of Astartes and Guardsmen, the Sisters of Battle are often deployed with members of the Inquisitorial Ordo Hereticus due to the holy war nature of their battles. The Sisters of Battle are suited up with their own form of specialized power armor that gives them almost like a Joan of Arc vibe to the battlefield. Though lacking the more extreme modifications of a Space Marine's power armor, mainly to the fact that Sisters are, for the most part, regular humans, the power armor of a Sister of Battle almost matches the defensive power of an Astartes, but with added flexibility and versatility in exchange for strength. Some of the patterns of armor do allow for the enhancing of genetics, but this is far from the norm. This, combined with an arsenal of tanks and vehicles.
You know what? I'd say Smash if it weren't for the two fucking flying babies right there. Kind of turns me off. Like, and also the missing eye thing. Well, she's not really missing it, but that scar. Anakin can pull it off.
That have literal church organ rocket launchers on them really brings across the holy war vibe in a gothic manner. Accompanying a Sister of Battle in the fields of war is the holy trinity of weaponry, the bolter, the flamer, and the melta. With such a simple loadout, the Sisters of Battle are able to bring down the glorious flames of the Emperor himself, and his holy light shines on them in other ways during a conflict. Hell, even their jump packs evoke angelic imagery as opposed to the more clunky jetpacks ones that Space Marines have. In times of great turmoil or impossibility, a living saint of the Sororitas itself might appear on the battlefield surrounded by a litany of doves and cherubs, an almost comical scene of holy glory followed by literal hellfire. The Sisters are a fascinating organization because they take what is normally seen as a benevolent force and turn it on its head to be a horrifying method of war. Because the Sisters are so zealous, they are nigh impossible to persuade and almost never fall to chaos. In fact, any deviation from the Imperial faith may see you killed outright as you are deemed a heretic, and sometimes Sisters have even less patience than the Inquisition does. To the Adeptus Sororitas, no punishment is too extreme for blasphemy and heretical behavior. Whether it's lobotomizing traitors to use as shock troops or attaching them physically to agonizing pain engines so they can die for the Emperor, anything goes. The most fascinating part of the Sisters, however, is their faith. We discussed how orcs often make things happen through belief because of their sheer number of them. The Sisters create miracles where they walk. They are not many psychers like orcs, but they are excessively devout and make up for that. Bullets barely miss targets they absolutely should hit. Guns jam, tanks malfunction, enemies slip and fall. The scene from Pulp Fiction is an accurate portrayal of what happens when the Sisters fight.
I'd knock that shit off if I was you. Die, you motherfucker!
One of the most prominent figures is the Triumph of St. Catherine, a literal open casket with the saint of a Sister's order held aloft by lobotomized servant cherubs and protected by bodyguards of the faithful. The devotion to the Emperor swells so strong that acts of faith are made manifest, and sometimes angels themselves. When the Sisters go to war, they have thundering organs and litanies screeching out into the battlefield, hymns and songs. They rabble off prayers on their lips and burn holy fire across the area. They spray holy water down from horns atop their vehicles. It is a genuine holy war, a procession of death. Saint Celestine is an undying deity, arriving precisely where she is needed and returning to the fold after each death. When she dies, she sees a crying young girl atop a mountain of bones. Her bones, after every one of her deaths. She climbs this mountain every time to help comfort this crying child and is rebirthed upon the battlefield. And one day, her deaths will create a mountain so large that even she will not be able to traverse it. Is she a demon of the God Emperor? Perhaps, but she'll be shot for saying so. She is genuinely and literally faith made manifest. Some Sisters may make a mistake, however, and find themselves questioning their faith, disobeying a command, and even leaving their order. These Sisters are sent for reconditioning.
Yeah.
And are known as the Sisters Repentia. They generally face the front of the line head on and seek retribution and forgiveness from the Emperor himself. Though their actions were heretical, Repentia on the fields of battle is an indication of an individual wanting to become forgiven. They run aloft with torture devices attached to their bodies and a chain sword the size of their body, completely armorless, to determine if this is how they die or if the Emperor will forgive them. Even the most famous champion of the Sisters, that Saint Celestine, was a Repentia. Even she questioned her faith. And if she can do it, so can you. Just don't run away again. They don't really do third chances. The Sisters of Battle are martyrdom-enthused zealots that create miracles in their tread. Their devotion is boundless and also a direct source of their power. A whole army of power-armored soldiers shooting, burning, and melting all in their path is bad enough, but it enters a whole different level when God is on your side. By bolter shell, flamer burst, and melta blast, the mutant, the heretic, and the traitor alike are cleansed of their sin of existence. So has it been for 5 millennia, so shall it be until the end of time. The Imperium devolving into wars of faith is to push its agenda further. Where the xenophobic nature of humanity was once strong, it has now been magnified, and there are plenty of aliens in this galaxy. 6,000 years prior to the current events of 40k, a planet was found by an AdMech exploration vessel. The life forms on the planet were seen using tools, but they were still very primitive, so the planet was marked for destruction to pave the way for the Imperial war machine. However, this was thrown off because of an extreme warp storm and that whole Doge Van Dyer thing. Flash forward to modern day, and an unknown but highly advanced vessel was shot down in the Imperial mining world, and the bodies on this vessel matched those life forms found on that primitive world. The native creatures on that planet were able to evolve rapidly due to them being unobstructed, and their highly advanced gear posed a new threat to the Imperium. Advancing over these years with a remarkable speed, these are the new upstarts in the galaxy, looking to make a name for themselves, all in the name of the greater good. These are the... So loud! The alien is not intrinsically evil. Do not hate him. Pity him his ignorance. Seek to understand his differences and acquaint him with his inadequacies. Only then will he accept his place in the greater good. The early history of the Tau is chaotic at best. Due to their extreme speed run to space travel, their journey to the stars were overburdened with inner conflict. It wasn't until the appearance of the Ethereals that things began to settle. These Tau to the warring tribes marked their unification under one common belief: the greater good of the Tau Va.
What about the greater good?
The greater good.
How can this be for the greater good?
The greater good.
This system is a caste-based system that seeks to unify and organize the Tau into an effective and successful society while working for their mutual benefit. These castes, in order from lowest to highest, are the Fire or Shas caste, which is soldiers, Earth/Theo, which is manufacturers and industrialists, the Water or Por, being diplomats and traders, and the Air/Core, being Navy officers. Also, you have the Ethereal/Un, which is the lords and leaders of the Tau. Now, unlike the paths of the Eldar, the Tau don't get any say into which caste they're in. It's determined upon birth due to inheritance from a parent. Trying to deviate from your caste, or trying to do tasks or even use tools assigned to another caste, is a grievous crime against the Ethereals, and those guilty of this crime tend to be sent to re-education camps, which sounds not so greater good, but a greater good than the good that the Imperium sees as greater. The guidance of the greater good also encourages the growth of the Empire through the absorption of other races and cultures. The expansion of the Tau Empire is split into spheres of time. So far, there have been 5 spheres of expansion, with a 6th one being planned in the current timeline. The first 2 spheres saw the Tau move beyond their homeworld and settle new planetary systems, known as Seps, and absorb multiple races into their ranks. But the 3rd sphere is where we see the Tau interact with the Imperium for the first time, which went about as well as you think it did. The Tau, as mentioned before, are highly advanced compared to some of the other species in the galaxy, and their military tactics are highly precise. Instead of the Imperial methodology of throwing everything at a problem, the Tau carefully assess any battle and take as many precautions as possible. Commonly, you will see a Tau warrior in a heavily modified battle suit with advanced targeting systems. The Tau do not often consider close combat to be something very effective, so they don't really put much stock into it. Their Gundam-like battlesuits have a multitude of functionality, ranging from overwhelming firepower to stealth-based combat, and since they're an upstart species with a bit of technical flair, they have plenty of AI drones that help them in the field of battle. In addition to this, the Tau are also joined in the field of battle by some of the species that have been absorbed into the fold of the greater good. These auxiliaries often employ tactics that the Tau are unable to do on their end, such as the brute force and almost primitive nature of the Kroot, combined with the the Geonosian aerial shock attack style of the Vespens. But the Tau assimilate more and more species with time, including even some humans who wish to break off from the Imperium for pick a reason. The aesthetic of the Tau also leans a bit more into the East Asian sci-fi aesthetics. The large mech suits definitely evoke that Gundam look, but the general garb of their higher-ups kind of create that motif, and they often have accents in the games that they are in. But while Tau are looked at as Gundam mech faction by some, others enjoy them for the full coalition of aliens. One of my favorite images in Warhammer is this official artwork by Games Workshop. Now, not a single one of these aliens are a faction in Warhammer, and yet they all are different species that do exist in this universe. The Milky Way galaxy is vast, and while the Imperium and many others exterminate what they can find, the Tau will assimilate those that can be assimilated. The crew and Vespens we already discussed, and the humans and also Votann will join them at times, but you also have the Galg, the Nigasar, the Vorg, the Thraxian, the Terrellian, Greet, Domati, and many others. Some of these are just one-off lines, and some are major players in the civilization. The Nigasar are, for lack of a better word, gigantic psychic polar bears with bird-like faces.
What? Oh, that's pretty sick. That's almost as cool as the orcs.
The Tau have psychic bears, and the fact I haven't seen this is a crime. The Tau as a culture are generally marred by the various issues that an advanced civilization would have in an unadvanced galaxy. They do not travel through the warp because of the insane dangers, but instead use a more classic FTL jump. However, because they aren't going through hell, it makes them a lot slower than many other races. The Imperium might surf through hell and lose a few ships, but they will get there first. Often they will take enormous cannons and weaponry and defeat their foes before they can even close the gap. One of their light walkers carried a weapon of lethal effect. It fired a form of ultra-high velocity projectile. I saw one of our tanks after being hit by it. There was a small hole punched in either flank. One, the projectile's entry point, the other its exit. The tiny munition had passed through the vehicle with such speed that everything within the hole not welded down had been sucked out through the exit hole, including the crew. We never identified their bodies, for all that remained of them was a red stain upon the ground, extending some 20 meters from the wreck. The fascination of the Tau is that in any other modern day world, their society would be horrid. Rigid caste systems, corruption, and politicking ethereals, and basically it's the greater good or nothing at all. But in the world of Warhammer, the simple fact that humans are accepted into their sphere should they please already puts them far and above the other races that would murder or eat them. But despite this, the existential dread that is the Tau Empire is ever so apparent. Despite being hyper advanced and
that's one thing I will say about Warhammer, that I think the designers have done a really, really good, consistent job at least from what I have watched thus far in this Warhammer journey of the last year and a half, on and off, is that they are very, very good at pretty much giving both positives and negatives in equal amount to every single faction. Not just in a gameplay perspective, which I do think they also do a really good job making arguments for every faction from a gameplay perspective. But in terms of a lore reason as to why one might like this one faction over another, right? They're pretty much all equally sort of despicable. It's just what do you dislike the most is what's going to push you towards one faction over another, right? And what you like push you towards, And I think that's really neat. That's really good, consistent, thematic design.
Welcoming a coalition of aliens, they are the upstarts, and they are painfully outnumbered on all sides. Almost any other faction in the universe, given the right amount of force, can wipe out the Tau Empire from existence. They themselves might not be perfect, but their slight glimmer of hope is exactly that, a glimmer in a dark and crushing galaxy. Of course, nobody dares take the attempt to destroy the Tau Empire, because doing so is an enormous amount of resources, and for the same reason why you don't full send your whole army to one person in a commander game of Magic. You open yourself up to player 2 and 3. But not to say it won't be a struggle. The Tau Empire, when prepared, are a vicious fighting force who might delete your formation before you even see them. But they lack numbers, and in the dark corners of the galaxy, something is coming that is entirely numbers. There is a cancer eating at the Imperium. With each decade, it advances deeper, leaving drained, dead worlds in its wake. This horror, this abomination, has thought and purpose that functions on an unimaginable galactic scale, and all we can try to do is stop the swarms of bioengineer monsters it unleashes upon us by instinct. We have given the horror a name to salve our fears. We call it the Tyranid race. But if it is aware of us at all, it must only know us as prey.
That's a
The
good
conflicts
line.
of Warhammer
That's a
40k
good
are
line.
chaotic enough with the sheer volume of violence that exists in the confines of the Milky Way. However, there is a threat to the galaxy that extends beyond our known galaxy that is creeping ever closer and cannot be negotiated with. What drew them to the galaxy is unclear. It may have been the light of the Astronomicon itself, like a moth to a flame. It could have been a Xenos device detonated in the Horus Heresy. It could have been that they were done eating the Andromeda galaxy and they have come to take ours, or they might be running from something far, far worse. Regardless of the why, the where, when it came to the first official contact with these creatures, was the planet of Tyranid. This is the site where the Imperium encountered a fleet of these creatures before being utterly torn to shreds. Thus, these creatures became known as the Tyranids. There is plenty of evidence that the Tyranids have been lurking in our galaxy for years beforehand, but this was the first true instance of their presence being fully known. Unlike other creatures in the realm of 40k that can be talked to, captured, or negotiated with, the Tyranids are unable to be reasoned with. They are, at their core, animals, but not the fun kind of animals. They are the xenomorphs of 40k, and boy are they hungry. They are instinctively hardwired to either kill or be killed, and they are an unrelenting force due to this. However, just because they don't talk outwardly doesn't mean they don't communicate with one another. The true horror of the Tyranids is found in their driving force, the hive mind.
3, 2, 1. Hot in here by Nelly.
That's what I guessed.
What?
You see, the Tyranids are a collective consciousness that are all connected to a singular embodiment of psychic power that is utterly incomprehensible to the human mind. To keep this connection there, the Tyranids on the field of battle are followed around by synapse creatures, essentially serving as their Bluetooth connection to the greater hive mind. This allows them to send and receive information about the battle they're in, and it also allows them to adapt to certain situations based off of the information gained. Depending on the enemy, the swarm might be able to develop a new weapon or new tactics so they can get the upper hand. When the synapse connection is cut, they are unable to essentially form a save state and are stranded. The sheer power of the hive mind presence pours from each Tyranid in such a manner that it causes a distortion in the warp itself. A hive fleet's arrival can cause a dark shadow the size of several light years, coined the shadow in the warp. This shadow prevents any usage of the warp, or at least makes it exceptionally difficult. Communications shut down due to astropaths being unable to talk. Ships cannot freely enter the warp, and even creatures with a warp sensitivity feel an immense dread due to it. It causes everything to just kind of sit dead, like at a buffet counter waiting for the afternoon meal rush. The Tyranids meander through the galaxy in these gigantic hive fleets that are fueled by bioships, and these ships contain birthing pools for Tyranid armies and more ships. Everything about the Tyranids is organic, and to fuel this war machine, the Tyranids consume any and all biomass they come across and absorb it into their respective hive. From the ground to literally the air, the Tyranids strip a planet to a lifeless and uninhabitable hulk. As a means to curb the advancement of the Tyranids, the Imperium has been known to preemptively exterminatus worlds in the path of a hive fleet so that they have less biomass to consume in an attempt to starve them. the Halo method, literally scorched earth tactics by taking everything out of the freezer and lighting it on fire. Outside of the obvious threat and adaptive and unreasonable enemy posed on the field of battle, the most dangerous aspect of the Tyranids comes in the form of their general unpredictability. The Tyranids are external to the Milky Way galaxy itself, and it's unknown where they truly hail from. However, their arrival in the Milky Way is seemingly random and in 3D space, implying quite heavily that Tyranids have the galaxy surrounded in some kind of way. Due to this, you will sometimes see instances of species engaged in a separate conflict, both agree to a temporary truce in order to take out a Tyranid threat. Because regardless of the stakes at hand, the existence of the Tyranids marks the heat death of the galaxy itself, and all the factions can ultimately agree that the Tyranids themselves act as the biggest threat to all of them. The Tyranid race is truly an unknowable horde, and pulls from that horror of the unknown. They, as a faction, are not ones with a large amount of general lore because their entire race is told from the point of view of those being eaten by them. Tyranids are called that due to the planet Tyranid they destroyed, as we mentioned earlier, and their names are often phrases given to them by their victims: the Swarm Lord, Old One-Eye, the Death Leaper, Von Ryan's Leapers, and so on. Despite the inability to even perceive the vast psychic hive mind of the Tyranids, they are fiercely intelligent. Special poisons and items designed to counter them are adapted in a matter of hours. If you bring light infantry, they create heavy monsters. If you brought weapon emplacements, they spawn little creatures to scour your vents and sewers. Many of you enjoyed the Servitor excerpt from part 1, and so bear with me as I provide you another very long account of a planetary governor whose planet is in the final death throes of the Tyranid menace. This starts about halfway through. It has been many weeks since a handful of us escaped the sinking of the Sea Fort Divine Anchor via airlift. We have escaped in this manner because the Tyranids had overwhelmed so much of our world, they no longer appeared to need to continue spawning beasts for aerial supremacy. I shall never forget what I saw from my craft's portholes. Alien biostructures dominated Huto's surface. Gigantic, lumpen barnacles pumped out clouds of matter to further poison the planet alongside pulsating, brain-like nodes that resembled lethal fungi. Immense capillary towers stretched high into the poisoned sky. The glistening chitin coating their flanks crawled over by chains of lesser beasts fulfilling some sick alien purpose I cannot know. Digestion pools spread for miles, replacing our once great lakes with reservoirs of bubbling biomatter. Tides of creatures bloated with consumed flesh vomited their guts into the pools or threw themselves entirely into the billowous liquid. Amidst the seas of feeder beasts consuming all in their path, we would every so often see an explosion or a burst of fire. Were these heroic final stands by other survivors, or merely abandoned ordnance detonating at random? I will never know. I cannot rejoice in the deaths they inflicted. The biomatter of the dead Xenos was surely recycled by the Xenos regardless in no time at all. Our aircraft ran out of fuel a week ago. Now I stand in the snow, not far from the peak of Mons St. Hela. I am the only one left that I know. One by one, those with me perished. The slightest cut on a mountain rock resulted in an immediate infection that left the pilot screaming in agony. Her co-pilot fired the shot that ended her torture, and my senior aide threw himself from a ledge, the reality that there was no escape hitting him. I have no idea what happened to my chief medicae. Others were slain by lone beasts the rest of us were unable to kill or drive away. A justly deserved end will soon be mine. I have failed on every possible level. We were not even able to send word. An alien disease has me within its grasp. My limbs are numb, my tongue is dry as sand, my head throbs. Even at these chilled heights, I sweat profusely. From here where I sit, I can see the final death unfold on the planet entrusted to me. Before me is the Radarin Ocean. The water level is visibly dropping, hour by hour. They are even taking our seas. There are enormous beasts with great, slowly flapping wings and immense open maws moving through the sky. I may be at high altitude, but the air is thinner here than it should be. I know enough of mountaineering to know that. They will not even leave our air. There is an isthmus I can see, upon which is sat one of the Xenos capillary towers. Now I believe I can tell what they are truly for. High up, foul Xenos bioships cling to their flanks like twisted calves at their mother's udders. They are feasting, I am sure, hungrily filling themselves to burst on the hideous gruels that are what remains of my people. I have witnessed the planet's death from sinister start to hideous conclusion. I see the power of our foe, and though I have shown boundless weakness these past months, I do not see how we could ever have won. If this is any sort of good news, it seems that one thing that might be an inadvertent repellent effect on the Tyranids is chaos. Chaos and chaotic energies offer no nourishment to the Tyranids, they cannot eat that. And the presence of rifts and warp storms work as a means to starve out the Tyranid fleet. The Tyranids, of course, are attempting to adapt to this, but it seems that even at the most primal core of the galaxy itself, Chaos agrees that these dinner guests are not welcome in any way, shape, or bioform. In the end, though, the Tyranids represent the final fears of the galaxy itself. Despite the goals to conquer the galaxy as a whole, the remainder of the universe may very well be dead and derelict space. Instead of endless worlds and solar systems, it may just be bones and ash. The tendrils of the hive mind have wrapped themselves around the galaxy, and the only thing that's guaranteed is that dinner is served. However, the Tyranids are not simply the unending hordes of bugs. Beyond the more general buffet tactics of the force of the Tyranids, the hive mind has a more secretive and dangerous means of planetary conquest in the form of something a bit more terrestrial. General upheaval and revolution. However, though the idea of a societal revolt for the good of the populace is an admirable thing, these leaders have the nefarious intent of the hive mind itself. These are the downtrodden and the oppressed, the revolutionaries to a better cause, the heralds of the Star Children. These are the... In the sunless body of our hive, the flock of the faithful grows. We are guided by our great Father's sacred vision, protected by his loving hands. Within these holy shadows we dwell, while the impure bathe in spire-topped starlight. And what lies between those stars? What sails beyond those distant suns? Shrouded in night, born within that eternal black, our redeemers, our gods, truer than the silent, long-dead emperor, the children of the void. We hear them in our dreams, we feel them in our blood. They call and we will answer. We will rise and claim the engines of labor that have bound us in service.
Seize the means
this
of production.
World will burn. It will be cleansed, purified, made ready, and the heavens will deliver our reward. The ground zero of a Genestealer cult comes in the form of the Genestealer itself. Deep in the depths of a planet, a Genestealer acts as almost an advanced recon unit for the Tyranids, and were the first Tyranid units encountered by the Imperium itself long before the first Hive Fleet made its presence known. Unlike the Tyranids that can only reproduce through the birthing pools in the fleet, a Genestealer reproduces via the Big Smooch. The Genestealer kiss is essentially what the facehugger alien does. It attaches to a victim and releases an embryo. However, instead of a chest burster, the embryo alters the genetic makeup of the host itself, turning it into the primary conductor of a localized version of the hive mind known as the brood mind. Any offspring that this host produces is known as a Genestealer hybrid, and the host assures their survival to continue to reproduce. The first few generations of a Genestealer hybrid look more like the Genestealer itself, which in our current reality would be terrifying. But considering how the vast majority of humanity is a little mutated in 40k, it doesn't stand out as much as it should. As the generations continue, the mutations and the general alien look is almost entirely phased out, and the resulting hybrids look almost identical to the species that they once were. Due to the size of most worlds, the makings of a Genestealer cult can exist almost entirely in secret, generation after generation. After a certain period of time, those hybrids will make their way into generalized society. Still connected to the mind of the Genestealer itself, the hybrids operate.
Okay, so these are coming in like Genestealer cults are coming in centuries before the Hive even gets there.
With the express goal of gaining power within society itself in a political and religious sense. Most of the time, they will present themselves as revolutionaries, looking for the betterment of the population. And honestly, it sounds great for a lot of the folks on the planet. By the people, for the people. As they expand more openly, the crossbreeding continues until all aspects of the planet's society is infiltrated. However, all bets are off when a hive fleet comes close enough. When a Tyranid hive fleet gets close enough to a planet, the broodmine activates essentially an endgame scenario. The once political and religious leaders become bloodthirsty fanatics that work to finalize the collapse of society and the death of those who oppose them. But to those in the broodmine, the god they believe in is coming, and this is holy justice and vindication for their religious and political beliefs. As the hive arrives, the planet is essentially ripe for the taking. The original Genestealer pieces out to the next world or is reabsorbed for deployment elsewhere, and the Tyranids begin to take the planet for themselves. The cultists sing praises and holy songs as the Tyranids begin to eat everything up in kind of a meet the pyro sense of religious delusion. But as they are harvested, some of them are snapped back to reality, oops, there goes gravity, before they are thrown into the biomass soup. For a fleeting second, they see that this was all a ruse to consume the world and that their false gods were a bunch of hungry bugs. The cultists essentially put the checkerboard dining cloth on the table for them and invited them for a feast. Due to the constant redeployment of Genestealers, there are known cults that pop up across the Imperium itself. Some of the more well-known ones are the Cult of the Bladed Cog or the Rusted Claw, but there are hundreds, if not thousands, of different cults that keep popping up all over the galaxy as the Genestealers spread. And due to their covert means taking over the planet, they are not generally viewed to be a threat until it is far too late. And due to the know-how of Genestealers, they tend to be predatory to those in the lower classes of a given planet. The Genestealer cults overall have really come into their own, commercially and artistically. They have very much embraced the revolutionaries aesthetic and crafted a fascinating method in doing so. It's this great combination of this pseudo-Marxist Bolshevik uprising mixed with the hills have eyes in the populace. What's particularly enjoyable about their uprising is that often from their point of view, the reasons they have are extremely justified. Most of the members of the GSC are the extremely impoverished and menial laborers of the Imperium, who honestly wouldn't need an alien.
The bug keeps telling me to short the Bible, but I don't fucking know what either of those things mean.
Presence to provide a manifesto on reasons to revolt. Their weapons are all makeshift and often involve things like mining lasers, drilling saws, demolition charges, giant stop signs. Their political machinations work quite well, as the cult ends up being really good at assassination, especially when you have a third arm holding a pistol beneath all those robes. They're a faction rife with fascination and culture, and their plans are generations in the making, to the end goal of being thrown right back into the soup by the star children they prepared the world for. And those are the threats to the galaxy now. The degradation of almost every species is now behest by the Tyranid menace, and all of the infighting between each and every single one of them will be their undoing. The world of Warhammer is a bleak and horrendous one, and that is in its own right the charm. It is so large, so vast, so absolutely horrendous and insane, and yet is treated with 100% severity and seriousness. In the beginning of part 1, I gave you an abridged and different opening to the Warhammer world, the grim darkness of the far future, and I leave you with this part 2 with the full quote itself. It is the 41st millennia. For more than 100 centuries, the Emperor has sat—
I'm not listening to that whole ass thing. I'm sorry. I'm not. This video is way too long. I love Bricky's Warhammer videos, those from years ago or whatever. The ones I watched last year are among my favorite of the Warhammer videos I've watched. Perhaps my favorite of them all. These two, however, do not rank so high. I think it was too much information at once. Like, I think these could have been, honestly, a lot of, I think my complaint with a common complaint I have with a lot of Warhammer 40k content is things could be condensed here, right? We don't need this much information in lore videos and condense things a bit tighter. Right, that's what I really liked about his first videos at this, is they were pretty short comparatively. They're still like pretty long videos, but like they were still condensed, but yet like I felt like he got more across in a more understandable way in the first Faction Explained video than he did in these two videos. I felt like it's just a lot of information. Maybe it could have been, maybe I would have walked away with more of it if, say, these videos were done in even more parts, right? Or if you just dedicated, you know, like I know YouTube right now is pushing out, wants creators to make really long form content. But like, you know, cut this video in half, make them like 45-minute videos or 45 to 50-minute videos, not well over an hour. And then the first one was a 2-hour long video. I think it's just a bit much. But I still enjoy Ricky's means of delivery and a lot of his comedy. So, but yeah. Oh, don't know when I'll next watch a Warhammer video, but yeah. Peace. Woo.